a central way that we serve the broader community is by how we serve our household or make a thriving household. But note how there's this expansive aspect of a major reason I strive to have a good household is that is how we serve and be members of something bigger than ourselves. Hi, I'm John Cuddeback.
And I'm Sofia Cuddeback.
If you're wondering whether you can really be friends with your spouse
And raise children into responsible adults with whom you have a relationship.
and do what it takes to make a homestead, reconnecting with your body and the land wherever you live,
If you just want to think more about how to make a truly happy home in our trying times,
then the Intentional Household, a LifeCraft podcast, is for you. Join us. Welcome, everybody. Household and community. Are we too busy for both? Well, it's good to be with my wife, Sofia. I'm looking forward to this conversation as I always do. I want to share the quick backdrop for this discussion. We actually have often gotten this question, hear this stated by people. They're trying to focus on their household and find it very difficult to do both that and be a good member of the broader community. How do I participate in parish activities? How do I help my neighbors and work with my neighbors? How do I get involved perhaps politically in the local town? And it's so hard. Here we are very often emphasizing we've got to be more intentional, have more focus in the household, even if that's for the sake of the broader community. But to do that, of course necessarily brings with it an investment of time and energy that has to make it harder to find time and energy to be part of actively the broader community.
Mm-hmm. And, full disclosure, people do ask us that question very frequently, but it's also a question that we're constantly asking ourselves. So I think it's a really live issue, or in any case, we experience it as a live issue in our own life of trying to find, what is kind of, I don't know, it seems a little bit cheaply, but it is a real term, the balance between the demands of the household, especially an intentional household, and the demands of community and trying to integrate them in a balanced way. It's a very live question for me all the time.
And go a little further and say, we don't have confidence that we are doing as well on that as we could and should be.
Yeah. Or in any case, we feel like we're looking for an answer, a further answer. I think we're always on the way, but we don't feel like we've arrived, so to speak.
And maybe we do put a lot of energy into saying we must put that focus on the people, on one another, on our children, having guests, the things we do in our household, because there are so many, as we often say, centrifugal forces kind of pulling us away from the center of the home.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to pull it back in. And well, let's be frank. One of those things is if we're going off into parish activities, the things going on in the broader community, in some sense, we are leaving the home to do that. And so right now, if we were to give ourselves a score on this, I'd say probably we have erred a little bit on the side of more energy in the home because we just have such a deep conviction about that. I mean, would I go back and change what we do? This is part of why I want to discuss this. We need to keep discussing this because I'm not sure what I would give up that we are doing in the home. But I do feel as though there are things that we, in some sense, coulda, shoulda done in the broader community. And this is objectively very difficult, even stressful.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that assessment. And I kind of feel like I want to follow up that, yes, while what you said is exactly true and exactly how I'm experiencing it, I'm looking for the principle to help me try to understand or even measure, could we have done better? How could we have done better? And how do we move forward doing better? And so I feel like there's a principle in there that I'm trying to understand. So I'm actually really looking forward to this conversation.
Well, and I'm going to share in a moment a quotation from Marcus Aurelius, which, as you know, is kind of the backdrop where we said, when we read that, we started thinking about, oh, we need to have a discussion about
Yeah,
this.
for sure.
So we'll come to that in a moment. But how about going to 50,000 feet? It's always better to be at 50,000 first than at even 5, 10,000. Very important philosophically. There's a primacy. Pardon me. There's a primacy of the common good, the good of the community to which we belong. And there's a very important insight of the ancients that is picked up by St. Thomas Aquinas and the Christian thinkers of there's a society that's called the complete society. Just naturally speaking, we're naturally social animals. We're naturally social in the form of household, family and household. We're naturally social in the form of the political community. But Aristotle called the political community the complete. Sometimes the word perfect is used, although that's confusing because it makes it sound as though there's nothing wrong
No
with it.
error.
That's not the
Yeah.
point. Perfect in the sense of complete. The political community they called the complete community because it's the community where all of the needs naturally of the human person are addressed, are spoken to, and thus the flourishing of the political community is what they saw as the main instantiation of human flourishing. In other words, a household by its nature is just a part. It needs to be part of something bigger, of a bigger
Mm.
flourishing. When we say political community, it's also what can be called civil society. We don't mean the government. We mean, as it were, the nation, the whole broader civil
Yeah, that's what
society.
I wanted to ask you, if you could give me a little bit of a definition, what you mean by political community, like even if maybe a little description.
Yeah,
Even
yeah,
for you
yeah,
to say
sure.
civil, I'm finding,
Right,
okay,
right. I
look,
know
since we're trying to
these.
establish a principle, I've
I know
got to
these
have a little
words.
more clarity
And
here.
it's just political comes from the Greek word polis, which
Mhm.
meant city. City, not in the sense of urban area, but in the sense of what we're trying to say now of this fuller community that a village, for instance, is a part of. And when we say civil society, that comes from a Greek word, civis, the
Mm.
citizen, the civilization. So the
So would you is it a would you describe um, a civil society as a group of human beings that are interconnected or related to one another through need and service? Is that
Well, that is true, but you could say the same thing about a household. All the
mhm.
words that you just said, I think,
Okay,
would be true
so
of a household
so
too.
what's the
So I mean,
differentiation?
the main differentiation is, I think, is brought out by seeing the obvious natural partiality, the partness of a household.
Mm.
That when you think of human life, you have this sense, for instance, quickly, we don't want to spend too much time on this, but this is very important, that your parents are raising children in a household to be citizens, to be a part of something bigger than the household. You're not simply raising them to be members of this household or, frankly, even of simply members of any other household. And the main way that I think that this is captured is that natural needs and natural desires and inclinations of human persons call for more order, organization, sociality than is provided simply in a household. So, for instance, great examples of cultural things, cultural expressions transcend households. Household as a community is not the kind of community that can develop and pass on key aspects of human life, such as education. The pursuit of wisdom is something that is done by a broader community. A household as such can be a place and must be naturally is a place of teaching. But interestingly, it's more of kind of basic teaching. Then the household kind of passes the child on and beyond, in a case of something in the Middle Ages that would be called the university, where this is something much bigger that is in many ways pertains to a broader community, a community that by its greater size, complexity, organization is able to attend to deeper needs. Think of all the great arts. They might in certain ways be passed on in households, but households are not of themselves capable of developing, maintaining, and passing on arts. This was done by guilds, which are much broader than a household. Guilds are intermediate societies that take up their place also in this broader society that would have been, for instance, Athens. So Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, they very much saw themselves as men of Athens. Athens is the broader community in which we fundamentally do what we do, are who we are.
Mm.
And so this is why, for instance, households are willing to give up their sons to go and serve in defense of the broader community that they belong to. This is a delicate matter, and I'm sure this is already raising philosophical questions. It's
Mhm.
very delicate of the relationship of part in whole. How do these fit together? But we have to recognize part of the reason that we all naturally feel this tension is because there are inclinations, natural ones in us, towards being part of a broader community. We might participate in that broader community, especially through our household. We do. Also, a very important principle here, a central way that we serve the broader community is by how we serve our household or make a thriving household. But note how there's this expansive aspect of a major reason I strive to have a good household is that that is how we serve and be members of something bigger than ourselves. On the natural level, that bigger thing is what we call the political society or civil society. Then we can go supernatural and say it's the church. And this is where I think Christians should be able to see this point. I am ultimately should see myself more as a member of this broader community called the
Mhm.
church. On the supernatural level, the church is like the political community is on the natural level. It's a kind of complete or perfect society. It attends to all the needs at the supernatural level. So in our households, we serve the broader church. The parish is a part of the broader church. The parish is not about itself, but by living well in the parish, we are a living cell that is a good part of the broader community. So
Mhm.
this is what I think we need to think of in order to get the root principle, why we have to find a kind of balance, because we have to be outward looking towards those broader communities we're made for.
Well, I find that that's kind of an unexpected turn of the conversation. I wasn't expecting to talk about that. And I almost feel like that explanation of the relationship of the individual to the complete community is kind of a seedbed for tons of different conversations.
It is. It
I
is.
mean, it's actually kind of staggering how many things it makes you want to ask about the nature of human beings.
Amen.
But
Amen.
I'm just going to say here
But we're
that
gonna focus, but we are gonna
yes,
bring it back in to
yeah,
what we started with, right?
and
Because I think we can do that.
and part of the so kind of in view of trying to do that, I just want to give you my kind of reaction to what you're
Please,
saying
please
is
do.
that one thing that strikes me is talking about the importance of the complete community versus the smaller individual
Partial.
community of the household or other partial expressions of community. Almost kind of immediately my mind went toward the polis. The polis trumps everything, which obviously we've seen certain political constructs that do precisely that to the complete and total exclusion of the parts. And so while on the one hand, it's kind of being moved by the reality of, oh, there is this bigger entity that actually is kind of what I'm ultimately designed for. That kind of in a very unnuanced way, my reaction or my instinct is to say, oh, therefore all those other things are not important. I've got to focus on the polis. So it's again, I
For the
feel like
church,
an
right, right.
invitation. Yeah. So whatever the
The
complete
bigger one.
community is, either the church or the polis. And I'm realizing in myself this tendency to black and white something in search of a principle. Like I just want to make it cut and dry and just, this, okay, now I've got it. Now we're just gonna, since the complete community is the one that we're really supposed to be in, then let's focus all our energies there. And actually, the reality is it's a much more nuanced balance,
That's
and that
exactly right.
we're actually invited in to do a much more delicate examination of the balance I mean, again, we kind of a little bit shying away from the word balance because everybody says, oh, balance, you got to balance your life, you got to balance it, you got to balance your job. But in fact, that is kind of the perfect word to describe what we're being asked to do here. And that the balance is actually, we're talking about very nuanced
Percent.
shifts
Yeah.
in weight. And so, anyway, for me, this has definitely been a great way to start the discussion because it makes me, first of all, realize that I have a tendency to want to make things be black and white. And there's kind of a resistance in me to have to do what is, in fact, harder work of trying to see the nuance and really see that there is a genuine integration there that includes a
Right.
hierarchy. I don't know if it's as moderns who are allergic to hierarchy, or maybe it's just human beings since time immemorial, but
Yeah, it's always
it's
a great.
tricky.
Dear, this is a great focus and or kind of aspect for you to be bringing out. This might be helpful. Great line from Aristotle that St. Thomas Aquinas loves to quote. St. Thomas says it in Latin: "Sapientis est ordinare." It is of the wise man to order, and this is because the power of reason is always about seeing order and giving order. The wise man is the one who uses reason well. And so he's the one who sees order well and gives order well. Life is always about order. Nature is all about order. God's creation is a masterpiece of order. A good human life is a life of right order, where reason sees the order and acts according to it.
Hmm.
And so here, and that's why balance is fine. I like the word order even better because I think
Hmm.
it's a matter of right order, and it is an astoundingly rich, beautiful, complex one that we will spend our life trying to understand. But right now, let me express a principle that the wise express that is absolutely good as gold, life-giving, life-changing. And it can be put in different ways. When you put first things first, then and only then can everything else find its place. This is always worth coming back to. An expression of that or an instance of that is what we're talking about right here. To see the primacy, we could say, of the common good, of the flourishing of the broader, fuller society is the basis for understanding the integrity, the dignity, the importance of the flourishing of the parts. And
Mm-hmm.
so already this has taken a bit of time to come to, but really an appropriate emphasis of household life is one that ultimately sees it is essential to the broader and highest flourishing that I give due attention to my household. It is the central way, normally, that I serve the broader common good is by having this flourishing cell. For this flourishing cell is key to the flourishing of the whole. And we can say this on the natural level. We can say this on the supernatural level. In a sense, this is the beauty behind what a priest just wrote to me in response to hearing about my book on the intentional household. He said, "Oh, I'm so excited because my years of ministry as a priest have made clear to me it all goes back to good families."
Mm-hmm.
Very simple. Almost sounds too obvious to mention, but that's an instance of the principle. If you seek the good of the church, then you seek the good of households.
Mm-hmm.
If you seek the good of the broader community, then you seek the good of households. And so we are animated by this love of a broader common good of the broader communities to which we belong. That is it is the deeper beauty, the deepest beauty really of loving what we're doing in our home. Not that's not it is worthy in itself. It's worthy in itself as part of that broader thing. And that is how we are serving that broader thing. And that's never going to take away from what we do in our home. But if I might just put this, but we still have this interesting aspect, and this is why we have this question that we'll go more specifically into now. What I do in the household is not the only way I serve the broader common good. I'm also called to serve the broader common good in certain, we can just say more direct,
Mm.
not that the other's indirect in some negative sense, but sometimes I need to go out there and participate in
Mhm.
political activity. Try not
Mhm.
to even just take political in a very broad sense. You and I just,
Mhm. Mhm.
now we think of that in the narrow, I got to go run for an office. Just the broader workings of society or the workings of the parish. We need good people from good homes to be doing these things in the broader community,
Mhm.
to be village leaders, to be town leaders, and some to be national leaders. So clearly, the richness of being human cannot be reduced to, well, I just need to do a good job in my home. You and I, as a husband and a wife, and as citizens, citizens of an earthly kingdom, and even now, citizens of a heavenly kingdom must always be turning our eyes towards what do I owe to the broader community? How do I need to go out and serve? That will change according to timing,
Mhm.
right? Will
Mhm.
change often according to whether you're a man or a woman, right? If you're home nursing a baby, right? That might be pretty much the main and maybe only way, right? That you're serving the broader common good, but we're always open to looking towards these other things. And that's why we have this question we opened with.
Mhm.
How do we find that?
Mhm.
How do we find that right order? And we cast it as, are we too busy today to do both? Because that's a special challenge we need to talk about.
Mhm. Well, I love to start that conversation with kind of an increased awareness of myself as being a member of a smaller community and a larger community as well. It,
Hmm.
it's it's just a
Yes,
little bit of a psychological
it's
orientation,
beautiful. Yeah.
and yet it makes me it changes the way I ask that question to not see the obligations imposed upon me by either as being external obligations, but more as I am a member, I am a part of both of these societies, the smaller society of the
Hmm.
home and the larger society of the complete community, whether it's
Hmm.
temporal or spiritual. So anyway, I think
Great.
that I like
And
that kind of very slight but significant orientation shift in the way I think about it in order to help this be a more positive because I have to say, talking about adding something else to my plate, and now I have to like do things in the outer community, I feel almost like a panic
I,
arising.
this
And
is our
because this
issue.
is the whole
Yes.
point. Are we too busy? And so it's great to back
Yeah.
up and start the conversation from a different perspective while there might still be the practical detail, and certainly there are, to figure out the whole busyness issue. But it is starting it from a different psychological and
And
emotional
that's a great,
perspective.
it's an absolutely right starting point because we're realizing then for starters, we are already part of both our household and the broader community.
And both of those are a good
And
thing.
it's essential to who we
It's
are.
exactly. It's
Again, for
unto our
Aristotle
flourishing.
and for the Christian tradition, it is essential. It is part of human nature that you pertain to that broader society. And therefore, we must render to Caesar what is Caesar's.
Mhm.
Right? I mean, that's a very key principle there in the Lord's teaching,
Mhm.
and it fits with philosophically with the great Greco-Roman kind of backdrop. So we are already members of both. Now let's go to, but well, that's why so many people are asking this question because there's something natural and supernatural happening in them where they're kind of like, I can't just, I have to be somehow doing both. But of course, the key, because it's always about order, is a key is going to see how they have to be integrated. If it's just two completely separate departments of my life, now I'm going over here and doing this, now I'm going over here and doing this, which is
Mhm.
how modern life tends to be. In many ways,
Mhm.
we've been forced into to compartmentalizing. That's part of why we are really experiencing this challenge. Here's the quotation from Marcus Aurelius.
Do you wanna say who's Marcus Aurelius? Why is he important?
So,
And
so
what is that quote from?
this is the book is called The Meditations. He's a famous Roman emperor that was something of a philosopher. And he himself was not Christian. Not long later, the empire is going to become deeply Christianized. He himself is not a Christian, but he is speaking from a kind of stoic philosophical backdrop. And his meditations have many beautiful insights. And here near the very beginning, what he's doing here is just giving, book one is called Debts and Lessons. And he mentions different people that he has learned things from or to whom he is grateful. And this of a particular thinker, number 12, Alexander the Platonist. This is what he learned from him. Not to be constantly telling people or writing them that I'm too busy, unless I really am. Similarly, not to be always ducking my responsibilities to the people around me because of, quote, pressing business.
Hmm.
So
Wow, that's
when
incredible.
I read this out loud to you, right? Remember, we both were like, because of course I am often telling people I'm too busy,
Or we're telling
right?
ourselves in relation to a question or demand, I'm too busy.
Or I can't do this because I've
Yeah.
got to have these pressing responsibilities. But this whole thing, it demands nuance because, of course, he has the nuance himself by saying not to be constantly telling people or writing them too busy, unless
Unless
I
I
really am,
am.
which makes me think, okay, well, I am. So I need to be constantly telling them that. So what have I just learned from him other than, well, yeah, I am too busy and that's unfortunate, right? So,
Okay, well, first, I have to say, first of all, the first thing that struck me when you read that is holy mackerel, this is not a new problem.
no, it's
I
not.
mean,
It's
that
not.
was so comforting
So
because we tend to think, oh, this is a problem of the modern age and technology, which of course has exacerbated things. But is somehow it's heartening to know that this has been an age old struggle of humanity, busyness.
indeed, but here's something else that's heartening. I'm going to invoke another favorite author of ours, the great architect Christopher Alexander.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's still alive. He was last time I checked. But one of his books, A Pattern Language, this quotation that I'm about to give is from a different one. I think it's from The Old Way of Building.
Or
So
timeless way, timeless
Timeless
way.
Way of Building.
Yeah.
So he's architect in a kind of old-fashioned sense of architect spaces of life in view of how you want to architect, use that as a verb, the structure of your life. So we love him because he's great at thinking about how spaces affect how you live. Right? But this
Hmm.
he at one point he gave this very broad principle, and I think of this often. There are situations that are objectively stressful. So we're not talking about just I'm stressed, which is a subjective experience, even if rooted in reality. Normally, when we think of stress, we think of kind of something subjectively going on in me. But he refers to how there are objectively stressful contexts, especially when, and this is a philosophical way of putting it, it was very helpful to me, especially when key goods conflict with one another and we have a context or situation where the demands of one good that we need in our life are set at odds with another good we desire slash need. Now, right now, you might be thinking, well, isn't this kind of the way human life always is that you have to be about finding the order and that there's always this aspect of, well, kind of things outside the home will be in some tension with things inside the home. Pardon me. The answer to that is yes. But key insight of his, and this is why I'm saying this is consoling, because we need consoling in a funny kind of way of recognizing why we have a problem and that it has been thrust upon us. And it's consoling to me because, okay, once you realize that, now you know what we're dealing with and we can understand better why this is so hard for us. The example that he gives is going to make this very clear. And we've talked about this kind of thing before, but here's the key thing he says. In post-industrial societies, the way that we structure, literally physically structure our living space, our towns, is we no longer live where we work. In prior societies, especially pre-industrial, that it was just normal that in general, people worked where they lived. The baker's shop was, his home was right there, right? The blacksmith
Mm.
kind of lives right there. The farmer, of course, lives right there. So these various craftsmen, in general, in short, you didn't commute any
Mhm.
distance to work. No, of course, there's always exceptions. But what he's saying is, by and large, that was normal. Whereas now, the normal situation is an intrinsically stressful one where it just talks about how this is the way suburbs are designed, and most of us live in suburbs even now, I dare say, even when we live in the country in a certain way, the exurbs or the country are more this way, are more suburban than what he's saying.
Mm.
Because when he was talking about this, even just writing this 30 years ago, 40 years ago, you didn't so much have this phenomenon of people living out in the country and commuting by car very far. Well, okay, well, we'll
Mhm.
just live out there and we'll just drive an hour, no problem. So the suburbs, I grew up in a classic suburb. You have residential areas, and that's where people live. Very little of work is done there, or in any case, very little of the work of the people who live there. So they drive across town, right, to your office. And he simply makes the point of having to spend that somewhat significant amount of time going remotely from the people that you live with. This makes for a kind of conflict between something very important good in your life, being integrated with and living with the people in your home. And another very important good, being integrated with and being with the people at your work. One of the main thing that he's focusing on is by and large, it also becomes two different sets of people, which
Mm.
is something we very seldom think of because we're just so totally used to this. But in general, it used to be if you live approximately to where you work, it's the same set of people. But now it's almost as though you have two lives. You have the life at work and the life at home. Saying this is an archetypically modern, post industrial, stressful context. So it's objectively stressful by the fact that these important goods, there's always some distinction between them in human life, but now they're made to be more competing because they've been more separated from one another. So I'm gonna ask you whether that makes sense, but
Mhm.
just to jump to make the connection, I think a beautiful that's very actually itself closely connected with a close other version of what here I want to take his principle of objectively stressful contexts and say, huh, this is why so many people are asking this question. Because the way that we tend to live now, because we tend to be over busy precisely because of things like the separation of where we live and where we work, the separation of so many other things and where we shop and these things have been separated out that now take
Mhm.
different chunks of time. They make it be so that these things are in competition for our time. Therefore, we feel constantly busy and we find ourselves saying, how am I ever going to integrate what I'm doing outside the home for the broader community with what I'm doing inside the home,
Mhm.
where in a prior kind of context, those things were much more closely integrated, both in space and in practice.
Mhm.
Picture the Amish village,
Mhm.
where you are often at one and the same time when you're having a barn raising you're still with your household, but your household is being integrated with other households
Mhm.
in the broader community, in a
Yeah.
barn raising. And so that's just an
Yeah.
example of so many activities where you are doing both at the same time. And it's very difficult for us to find those today.
Yeah. Eric Brende in his book, Better Off, when he went to live with the Amish for a year as a graduate research project, he also noted that the barn raising also provided the physical exercise that now we have to separate out and go to the gym. And so there are all kinds of other things that are being separated out that have demands on our time.
Can we stick with that example for a
Mhm.
minute? You're 100% right. Were you going to
No,
expand
well,
that?
I
Go
was
ahead.
just
Go
further
ahead.
examples of that are, going to the gym and then we go to the movies to get some kind of like relaxed loosening of the bowstrings. Whereas,
Interesting.
people who live in a more integrated community, they're singing, they're talking together, there's storytelling going on. And so all in one kind of organic project, many human needs are being met. The needs of the smaller community, the household, integrated into the needs of the larger community. And nowadays we have to compartmentalize all of those, provide compartmentalized services for each of those needs, which is going to de facto
Right.
just make us way more busy. It takes up more
Yeah,
time
which is why then we really have this problem when we hear Marcus Aurelius saying, unless you
unless you
really
really
are
are.
too busy, just to focus because it is so key. And this is so key. Eric Brende, this is from years ago. His book is called Better Off about his time with the Amish, but he shared with us that when I think it was he
Mm.
asked the Amish, "Why do you think it is that you never seem to be in a rush? You don't seem to be too busy, and, but you get a ton done." And
Mm.
I can't remember whether it was that he himself in asking the question kind of noticed this, or that the Amish themselves had this kind of self-knowledge by comparison to be able to bring this out one way or the other, it doesn't matter. But the answer came in the form of, it makes all the difference when the things that you're doing throughout the day, might say, are multi-valenced.
Mhm.
They have various worths.
Mhm.
They're doing these things at the same time. Maybe I'm getting in, think of this, talking time with my spouse, with my children, some type of entertainment, some type of physical exercise. Of course, this can be applied in many different ways, but it just really is so dramatic when you think of all these things for us to separate out. I guess I have to take my wife now out on a date, because otherwise, where do we really have time to talk to one another?
Connect, yeah.
I need to go. For so many, this whole interesting thing of going to the gym, because I have to go, pull on strings that have weights on the other end, because I don't have something in my life where I'm actually picking stuff up of,
Using your
moving around
body, sure.
and doing work. And maybe this is not a criticism of going to the gym. It's
'Cause you do need
understandable that we
physical
set those things up
exercise.
because people
Yeah.
recognize we're bodily beings.
Mm.
We need to have, it's key for our health and social time. By and large, the way our businesses are now done, for most of us, there's not social time there. And so the way that we do these various things in our life now are central to the problem we find ourselves find. Oh my goodness. How am I going to have time with my spouse, time with my children, and be able to attend to, my bodily needs, my need for rest, my need to communicate with others, my need to go out there and serve? So here we are, coming back now to our central issue. Am I too busy for attending to my home as I need to, and to the broader community? And to some extent, I think we need to begin from a certain perspective, at least if we're not very aware of this. The answer is yes. I mean, in the case, the objective context is very stressful and makes it be hard to attend to these things. So at least that's the starting point, in view of understanding that, of trying to address it.
Okay,
Do
so
you think? How are we doing?
I think we're doing amazingly, awesomely well at framing the problem. And now I'm
Don't
s
worry
like
about
so
solution.
depressed that because just like when we met Eric Day and we talked about his book, you just go, "I can't go live with the Amish." And so you go, "What in the world am I supposed to do?" So, um, I'm going to bring you back to the question of what do we do?
Great. Well, here
Now, okay,
we have some thoughts on this. We
that
can do this.
that's okay.
At least we can
We
talk
can do
about it.
it.
I'm
We
not
can
sure
do
if we
it,
can
dear.
actually do it, but
Okay, so actually, just to focus our conversation, make sure we go where we want to go. There are two different questions here. One is how do we deal with a bifurcated life, and how do we, in fact, make a bifurcated life not be too busy? And then the other question, which is related but in some ways separate, is when doing what it takes to have a real, healthy, vibrant, flourishing household takes so much effort and energy, how can we possibly find the time to do what the good of the larger community demands of
all
us?
right, we can do this, dear. This is huge. Sorry for this. It seemed like a very quick side. It is a very quick sidebar. I always remember in reading um, uh, Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Pippin, no,
Pip.
Pip. Sorry,
Uh-huh.
that's a lot of lyrics. Pip. At this moment, key moment, he had like all these bills that he needed to pay. And he, in any case, said it made him much better to like go through them and put them in a neat pile, separate them out, and at least know, okay, this is what I have to do. He felt better there. He hadn't paid them yet. So in a similar way, it actually is, and even a better way than that, a real step for us to take a deep breath, kind of sort out the problem on our desk, put it before us, and at least give ourselves the basic principle, even if at 10,000 feet, of how we're going to address it. Then life is about having the ongoing conversations of how to actually do that. But at least
Mhm.
we have the principle. You see the problem, and you have a principle of beginning to address it. I think we've said well enough what the problem is.
Mhm.
How have we already talked about this and seen this often? Just what we talk about as regards what we do in our household. We've talked about rediscovering ordinary activities of richness that are the kind of lifeblood of shared life in the home. Good work, true leisure, these activities that are going to bring life back to our homes by being forms of shared life. And that in itself is, first of all, the kind of thing that we're going to say here too. But kind of the principle is look for those richer activities that actually are ways of being, of living together, of living out your relationship. You, what about your relationship with your spouse and your children? Well, garden with them because working together is a natural context to actually be in the presence of one another and
Mhm.
get to know one another and to trust one another, simply being with. So that kind of
Mm.
richness, go ahead, you got,
I'm
you got.
sorry, this is just it's a little bit embarrassing to admit that the aha moment comes so late and also being married to Mr. LifeCraft, but I feel like I've had a huge aha moment about work and leisure.
Really?
I mean, this is literally exactly what
Maybe
you
it's
just
because you're
said,
Mrs. Lifecraft, but go ahead.
and heard you say these words before, and it's only in the context of this conversation that all of a sudden several things are coming together for me, which is work in the household, if approached in the right kind of way, covers many needs, many human needs. It meets many human needs. So it's basic. So it is the answer to what we experience as bifurcated life and very compartmentalized life. It's not the answer in the sense of everything you ever need. And but work, like you say, I'm dumb. Literally just said these words and it means something to me for the first time. Provides the context in which many things happen apart from the simple product of the labor. And that's
Amen.
where, but only if we see it that way. If you don't see it that way, then you're just doing laundry or you're just cleaning the toilet or you're just planting tomatoes so you have something good to eat. But you have to be open to the experience that the work that I'm doing is connecting me to those mostly who I'm doing it with, especially in a very kind of real experiential way. But even if you're not doing the work with someone, by being for them in a very practical, real way, it is actually multitasking. It is, in a
Yes. No,
sense,
you're right. Right.
providing for many human needs besides just the care of the body.
May our life be a series of aha moments,
Mhm.
even if they come not as often as they might have, into aha insights into the things that we're talking about all along. Because if
Mhm.
we're talking about the right things, it always bears more insight.
Right.
So there's never anything wrong with, in fact, everything right with, there it is. This is what we're trying to do. And indeed, that already is pointing to the principle. So, if nothing else, we can begin with a principle of trying our best to seek reintegration by are there activities, for starters, that attend to both? Are there things that and it's not always going to be the case. I'm not saying this is the only answer, but a very important starting point. Going back to the example of the barn raising, which is definitely a serving the community because the vast majority of the people that are raising the barn is not their barn. So remember that. This is not precisely speaking a household activity. This is a village activity.
Mhm.
Now, again, part of the challenging thing is we don't have
Those kind of
already
needs,
those
yeah.
things kind of built in. There are small communities that are trying to discover this by having the community work day, the community charity work day, go and help out that weaker, that poor, that underprivileged right, member of the
Mhm.
community, or even someone that's not so much a member of the community, but we're just going to help. This can be done by the village. This can be done by a parish. These kind of things are real. They're serious. They're life giving. They're life enacting. And there's any number of other such activities when possible. Seek things that are ways of engaging in the broader community with our household. That already is at least a start. I'm just going to throw out another practical thing. Bear in mind, we're hopefully our whole approach here to life in the home, the whole intentional, household approach to life in the home is seeking these ways of being more integrated, of attending, as it were, to different needs or desires at once. That will help us in our overall busyness because
Mhm.
it does allow us to attend to more together. And that in itself, hopefully, will enable us to, dare I say, free up some aspect of time or energy where if I say as father of the family am being more attentive to, all right, making sure that I am finding time for some work, some leisure with the family and the household. I'm going to take those same two categories of work and leisure because those are always the fundamental categories of human life. Throw in the kind of third mini of entertainment or amusement and look at how can I be doing that with and for in various ways the broader community.
Mhm.
Some type of leisure that we engage in. Is it that broader wedding celebration, anniversary celebration, going, there's a leisure aspect of these things that's very important. Having just been to a funeral that just of a dear friend that makes that come to mind. We need to have a community spirit. We have to be careful. We talked here about kind of finding the right balance. We can't be so busy in our home that we can't go to the funeral of a friend.
Yeah, so I guess what you're saying is, with a renewed understanding, the first step is to begin to look outward, outside of the household, to see and understand what is the pulse or the rhythm of the community that invites me to be engaged in it,
Uh,
whether it's a
Yeah.
need or whether it's a service or whether it's leisure. I mean, technically, leisure things aren't really a service. Something like building a barn is a service. But
Hmm.
so I guess the first step is that we have to be looking outward to be aware. I just want to mention, just while you were talking about integrated activities, I wonder if this is why the Amish can, quote unquote, get so much done. I mean, it literally just seems like they are more productive in the hours that they have than we who are so busy. And I wonder if you are experiencing, if you can experience the work that you do in the home or the work, the leisure, if you are open to it filling many human needs, psychological, emotional, and bodily, because we do a lot of this work anyway, but because we're not sufficiently aware that we're meeting a lot of needs, it actually doesn't fit psychological and emotional needs. I wonder, like, if maybe we feel depleted and therefore unable to just continue to do things unless we become workaholic about it. And our work is actually impeded by a feeling of starvation. If we don't feel like our
Mm,
human needs are being met,
hmm.
then there's a certain kind of spiritual exhaustion that happens, which causes a kind of like, I don't really know what to
A
do,
malaise, yeah.
a kind of malaise. And then the only way to get over that, the remedy for that seems to be just put your head down and do it. Oh, yeah, that person is just so determined. I mean, he just is in the office from 7 to 9 every night. So it seems like the remedy for that always seems to be, well, just buck up, make your will stronger, and just do it, the activity, just produce more. Whereas I wonder if the reality is if we let our work be more integrated, while we are producing a lot, we might not actually feel busy. We might actually more feel nourished and complete. And when someone feels nourished and complete, then they're able to look outward to a bigger community and
That's a great
say,
point.
what else? Oh, what do you need? Instead
I
of
think it's a
always going,
great point.
I'm starving.
And hopefully that's what comes to my mind. That so often we just feel a need to just kind of binge watch something
Yeah,
as give me
I
some
can't handle it. I
distraction.
just got to stop.
I'm just so overwhelmed. So obviously, the more we're able to get right order, have each thing in their place, the more we're going to have peace. We're not going
Mm-hmm.
to feel stretched 6 ways to Tuesday. I know there's no magic here. We're just talking about basic principles, and we got to wrap up. Can I just give this? Can we find something quick in this? Another line from Marcus Aurelius that's kind of in this zone. Do external things distract you? Then make time for yourself to learn something worthwhile. Stop letting yourself be pulled in all directions. Make sure you guard against the other kind of confusion. Not exactly sure what he means there. People who labor all their lives but have no purpose to direct every thought and impulse, to direct every thought and impulse toward, are wasting their time, even when hard at work.
Hmm. That kind
That
of
very much
says,
is
yeah.
what is what. So okay. How can we kind of move towards wrapping up? We need to try to we go back to where we began. We need to understand, we need to be thinking in terms of the principles. I like to emphasize again, particularly in this day and age, we don't have the cultural practices, customs, habits of thinking, right principles that have been kind of drilled into us in the air we breathe. We have to think of them ourselves. We have to remind ourselves that I am made for something bigger, both naturally and supernaturally. I'm a member of a broader city. Ultimately, I'm a citizen of the heavenly Jerusalem, and everything I do in my household should be ordered towards that broader Jerusalem, as it were, to which I belong. And I need to pattern that for my children. Hopefully, if I'm the type of father that is appropriately involved in their life, they'll have some pain when I say, well, I need to go give a lecture. Well, I need to go help out at the parish. Well, the men need me out there. That might, there's always in this veil of tears going to be an aspect of, oh, daddy, don't go, but I need to pattern for them. Sometimes I have to go. You know, my heart is with you, but I need to go attend to this right now. It's part of who I am. And it's for your good too that I do this. This is who we are. And one
Mhm.
day you too will have to look outward, even when in so many ways your heart is pulling you in. May it be so. You so badly want to be here at
Mhm.
home, but you recognize, yes, I am going to invest there as I must, but sometimes I must go out because that is central to all who we are. We are teaching our children something there. We can't be too busy to attend to both our household and the broader community. A major way we attend to that broader community is by having a strong household, but sometimes we must do activities that are directly ordered towards the outside. When possible, bring the household with us, you know, a la the barn raising. But sometimes mom or dad have to simply go out and help other people, or the children go out, right? And the children
Mhm.
start to learn to do that themselves. Their life is broader. You always have a home here with us, but we're made for big things we want to ultimately do together, but it is broader beyond our household.
Well, the takeaway for me from this conversation, which frankly is huge, I'm so grateful, is I am going to let the work that I do in the household be the nourishment for me that it actually has. I realize that I have not been allowing it to nourish me in a broader way. So I've not had the right attitude, so to speak.
Hmm.
And then I'm going to also practice being aware of myself in a very positive sense as a member of a larger community that I'm invited to participate in, so that I look outside of the work in the home. That the work outside of the home actually is nourished and filled by the work that's in the home, because it's nourishing me as a person, so that I can then turn around and do that for my broader community.
And discover yourself in giving of yourself.
Mhm. It's actually a surprising turn of the conversation, because at one point it was a really low point for me where I just thought, I am so tired, overwhelmed, worn out. If we're going to figure out some way that I have to do more outside of, I don't know how we're going to do this. And now I feel super positive about, it's not about grinding you more into the ground. It's about giving you back your birthright, which actually has in it what it takes for you to be refreshed, renewed, and invigorated to be able to do what you're designed to do.
Well, thank goodness we stayed together in this conversation to
Tell
this
me
point.
about it.
And we're glad that you others joined us. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for tuning in this episode of The Intentional Household. If you've enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and leave a rating or review. If you have any topic requests, please send them to lifecraftgroup@gmail.com. For our Wednesday reflections, free courses, reading groups, and live events, please visit life-craft.org.